And we are exactly on the hour, so I would like to welcome you all to our webinar that will discuss creating shopping experience in an omnichannel world. And you should be able to hear me all right now, so please turn on your sounds, and let's dive into the topic of today. So, creating shopping experiences in an omnichannel world. Why this topic today? What we see in the world of retail is that there are a lot of changes right now. And one of the most prominent changes that we observe is the changing role of the stores. While traditionally we used to look at stores and DCs in separate silos, we see the need for a unified stock pool rising. And we see customers are changing behaviors from offline to online citizens pretty much all the time. So we think this is really relevant topic to discuss with you today, and therefore we prepared this webinar. And luckily, I'm not alone today. I have two wonderful guests with me, Madalynn and Rogier. And before we start, I would like to quickly introduce herself. So Madalynn, can I hand over to you?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Steffi. My name is Madalynn Lauria, so I'm your omnichannel specialist today. I typically work with retailers, and I'm based out of our Boston office in North America, but working with them to help to build that business case around RFID and also outlining a deployment strategy that coincides with a really great omni-channel strategy. So excited to share more about that today.
Thanks a lot, Madalynn. And Rogier, same question for you.
Yeah, Steffi, thank you. So my name is Rogier Herrebout. I'm a consultant at Capgemini. My experience lies in supply chain transformations at retail and consumer products companies. I'm advising my clients in optimizing their supply chain or transforming their supply chains using the latest technology. And in that, my areas of expertise are e-commerce, order management, and last mile delivery. I'm very happy to be here today.
Yes, thank you for being here, both of you. And I think we have we have a lot of experience in today. So if you have any questions related to these fields of expertise, feel free to send them in today. I will let you know later how. And before we move on, I will also quickly introduce myself. I'm Steffi Broere, and I'm Nedap's Global Customer Success Manager, which means that I want to make sure our customers know how to use RFID and how to continue their RFID journey in a successful way. And what you may have noticed by now is that we are a combination of Capgemini and Nedap people. And what we want to stress here is that we are here with a leading consultancy firm and a global leader in RFID in retail. And why are we here today? Because we want to share knowledge. We do see that there is a lot of knowledge to be shared on new trends, on new applications of RFID in retail. And there's no better way to get to this end state where a full omnichannel experience can be fulfilled than by informing everyone on how to do that. So that's our aim for today. And before we dive into the topics, I would like to give some quick house rules. First of all, the timing of this webinar is about 30 minutes of content, after which there will be time for a Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can send them in via the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen or at the top of your screen. And there will also be some polls. So we have 3 polls prepared for you today. And if there's a question on your screen, you can simply answer it by filling out which answer is best applicable in your situation. The webinar will be recorded. So if you enjoyed it, or if you feel like another colleague should see it, feel free to share it with them or watch the recording again if you missed out on an interesting part. And also, if you have some feedback for us, or if there's anything you would like to share with us, feel free to connect with us and let us know how we can support you even better. So what will we cover today? First, we will dive into some consumer behavior trends. After that, we will dive into how to create a seamless shopping experience. We will discuss the role of a store as a mini DC, and we will have some best practices in implementing omnichannel from Rogier and Madalynn. And then we start with the first topic of today. The first topic is consumer behavior trends. And we see that this is especially relevant right now because the world is changing rapidly. But a conclusion that might be a little bit early to draw, but can be drawn already, is that we see often that existing trends are accelerated. So we see faster adoption of trends that were already there. And I think Rogier highlighted some interesting trends from research from Capgemini that really support the role of omnichannel in retail. So Rogier, can I hand over to you?
Sure, Steffi, thank you. So at Capgemini, we work for a lot of clients in the retail and consumer products industry, but we also have our own research institute. And the combination of both, so the daily practice and the research, is offering some great insights that I would like to share today. And basically, for today, I've highlighted 3 major trends that I see happening in this area, which are relevant for today. The first one I would like to discuss with you is the switch to online. So of course, personally, I'm also experiencing this, the growth of e-commerce. We see a huge increase of online shopping. This is and will remain as a major driver for the retail industry. And in 2019, for example, we saw a little more than 3 trillion euros in global retail that was transacted online. So that is a huge number and it's only increasing. As an example, the graph on your lower left in the screen shows, and this is typically for grocery, but shows in just 3 years for most regions a growth of 12 to 15% in just 3 years. So that's huge. And this is for grocery. So if you compare it to other retail sectors, you can probably compare it, or maybe the growth is even higher for fashion, for example. Then there's the adoption of online shopping. Especially now in this pandemic, people are exploring the possibilities of e-commerce, especially in the group of people who are older than 50 years. We see that they are starting to explore e-commerce and starting to get used to it. And the expectation is that this will have a permanent impact on shopping. And another important factor is that a lot of people, around 3.2 billion people, still don't have access to the internet. But a lot of them are switching in the coming years. So that is also a huge opportunity for retailers to start using their online channels more and more. Another one is the 5G, so then the transition towards a much faster cellular network. Most of us are used to shopping online on our desktops or mobile, but 5G will offer us a much better and more fluent mobile experience as well. So the expectation is that mobile will start to kick in a lot faster than we're currently seeing, and that people are starting to shop more and more on the go and wherever they are. And the last one on this trend I would like to highlight is the COVID-19 pandemic. The expectation is, and we are already seeing, that it's increasing the adoption of omni-channel shopping. Again, a huge shift towards online. And if you see in the graph on the bottom right, which is an expectation of the growth compared to what it was before the pandemic as compared to the worst case, average case, and best case scenario, that still for offline retail in the average case scenario, growth is expected. It's lower than it used to be before the pandemic, of course, but still a growth. But especially online is still in the worst case scenario, an increase of 10.2%. So that's still huge. And then as a second trend, it's the demand for fast and seamless delivery. Our consumers expect a wide range of delivery options. So from the traditional next day or 2-day delivery, people are expecting more and more to pick up their goods in store, have their goods within the same day or even within 2 hours. In earlier research by Capgemini, we found that 55% of consumers will switch to a competing retailer or a brand if they are offering a faster delivery service. So that's a huge number. And also 55% of the consumers say that 2-hour delivery option would increase their loyalty. But only 19% of the firms we researched offer this capability, so the 2-hour delivery. Also, a big opportunity here is the adoption of 5G, the same one that we saw before, combination with smart sensors that is allowing them to make their retail and supply chain processes much faster and cheaper. And it's also allowing them to offer this to consumers. If you look at the graph below, you see that consumers who are satisfied with their delivery service with their retailer will be most likely increasing their spends, sharing their positive experiences, and truly becoming your brand advocates. So that's very powerful, and this really is a trend we are seeing, an expectation of consumers. And finally, the third trend, the omni-channel availability. Consumers are shopping anywhere from any platform, web shop, or store for their product. So traditionally, you would go to your brand web shop or to your retail web shop if you were looking for a certain product. But in these days, people are just, if they've seen their favorite products on Instagram, they are just going to look for it and compare and buy it from any marketplace or web shop that is offering it for either the best price or for the best service. So it's no longer a mono-channel situation. And people expect a seamless and consistent shopping experience, regardless of where or when they engage with your brands or retail chain. So that's in short the three trends we see currently, and we'll touch upon them later.
Rogier, one of the things I noticed in your research was that online and offline are both expected to grow in 2021. I think typically we hear in the market that online is growing and offline is dead, but your research does not say that. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I definitely think there is still in this situation with the pandemic, you still see growth in offline retail. Of course, there's been a huge dip and retailers starting to climb out. But with the possibilities that we're going to explain today, there's a huge benefit for stores. So I'm definitely expecting a growth there.
So the old saying of the old role of the store is that maybe doesn't go on after all.
Exactly.
All right, let's hear more about that later. Thanks a lot, Rogier. And next topic that we really find important in this webinar is creating the seamless shopping experience. What does that really mean? And I think, Rogier, you also have some interesting insights from your research with a new take on how to interpret this seamless shopping experience. But before we do so, we quickly go over some general omnichannel examples. So what we hear often is terms like click and collect and ship from store. We know these terms, we know how you can use the store then to send out orders, but we also see a lot of new terms popping up, like click and try and click and find. And just before this webinar, I had a chat with Madalynn, which actually highlights the example of click and try quite nicely. So Madalynn, would you be willing to share the example here with us today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think click and try, when I heard this from you, Steffi, was definitely an innovation that I'm on board with. I was shopping just this past weekend, and of course in Boston, a lot of stores still have lines and do not have the fitting rooms open. So my experience was I went in and I picked a bunch of clothes that I thought would fit. And eventually when I went home, I realized, okay, I need to return them, either need something different or not. And I feel that I would definitely choose to go to a retail environment if they had the option to assign the styles or the items that I wanted beforehand and put them in the fitting room for me. Conversely, about a year ago, I went into the Nike store actually on Fifth Ave, and they did have an option where you can communicate with store associates from inside the fitting room. So I think this is definitely an innovation that consumers will get on board with, and hopefully retailers as well.
Exactly. So you're clearly merging the online experience in an offline world where communication is quicker, communication is easier, but you're still able to physically touch the product before you buy it.
Absolutely. The store is still important.
And what it also has as an extra benefit is in this current situation with social distancing, it also offers stores a possibility to still sell their merchandise, but not have people crossing each other on the shop floor.
Yeah,
really
exactly.
Nice.
So a more streamlined shopping experience for both the store and the consumer. Yeah, I think, and what you see here is that there's even more new terms popping up. And like Rogier already stressed, it's on the one hand able to provide a sales uplift if you have a satisfied customer with your online experience, offline experience. But what we also see on the other hand is that, and this is actually a quote from one of our customer, that's a global leading fashion brand, is that if you're not able to fulfill an online order, it is death to the relationship with your customer. And of course, it sounds quite harsh if you say it like that, but there is a truth in it, because what we see is that a negative experience has a high likelihood of the customer not returning to you, or in the worst case, even returning to a direct competitor. So of course, a positive experience, great, you have a sales uplift, but also if you don't tap on this bird, you just jump on this wave, you just have a negative consequence as well. So now that you know how important it is, we are curious to hear if you've already thought about what initiatives you want to launch. And with that, we want to ask you which omnichannel service is next on your roadmap. And you see the terms here that were mentioned before: click and collect, click and curbside, click and reserve, click and try, click and find, click to bricks, ship from store, last mile delivery, or return in store. And we would like to know from your side which omnichannel service is next on your roadmap. So we give you a couple of seconds to fill out this poll, and then we'll share the results with you.
While everyone's filling out the poll, I also wanted to add to that quote. I think that's a really interesting quote, and it really makes it dramatic on how that relationship can be, inhibited if you're not able to fulfill the order. I also spoke with a customer this week who said that the online shopping experience to them is equally as important as the in-store shopping experience. But that was also an interesting take.
Yeah. So you see that retailers become to see that they really need to complement each other rather than replace each other, which was often mentioned before. Yeah. I think most of you have filled out the poll, so let's share the results with you. And what we see is that most of you are still looking at click and collect on their roadmap, and also ship from store. So 43% is interested in click and collect as a next step, and 29% in ship from store. Interestingly enough, we also see some people choosing click and reserve and click and try. So it's nice to see that you're immediately jumping on the next trend.
Very cool.
And I think it makes sense also from a retailer perspective to go for click and collect and ship from store next, right? As they are still very common and very much adopted by the consumer. Rogier, what do you think of these results?
Yeah, I'm also looking at them, and I think click and collect is indeed almost a must-have nowadays. So if you order online, you want to almost be able to pick it up in store, and it's also a great boost for your revenue, because people walking into your store picking up a parcel also have the opportunity to look around and maybe pick up some more goods. So that's really a powerful capability to have. And the ship from store really is, I think, also a very nice one and a modern one, because that allows you to start fulfilling on the same day or even within a few hours if you use, for example, bike delivery. So really interesting choices.
Yeah, I agree. And Rogier, can you then also explain how to make these products available via your stores and how that's being adopted by retailers?
Yeah, sure. So in the title also of this webinar, we've been talking about omnichannel. So, and I usually make the divide between omnichannel commerce and omnichannel delivery, because buying your goods, so everybody has at least a few internet connected devices within your arm's reach. So it's whether it's a laptop, a mobile phone, an iPad, I don't know. And on all those devices, you have the possibility to order anything from anywhere. And being present as a retailer is really a must-have for these days. And omnichannel really means selling through all those possible channels, also via stores, but especially also online, social, buy online, pick up in store, and also, and this is becoming more important, marketplaces. Like we see in China, the marketplaces are huge, and a lot of brands are attached to a few marketplaces. So we really see those channels coming up. And the other one is omnichannel delivery. So once the order has been placed, it's of course important how your consumer expects your brand or your retail chain to deliver that goods to the consumer. And this is becoming a key differentiator for retailers. So it's not, like I mentioned before, it's not only price, but it's also the convenience of having your parcel at the moments that you want it. And this can be also pick up in a store, but also delivered to your home by bike if you care about the environment, if you want to have a green delivery. So it's all these choices are there, and we really see that it's becoming necessary for a retailer to offer those. I see that many retailers do understand the potential of their stores, but don't all make use of them yet as an e-commerce fulfillment hub. And that's a huge opportunity. We'll talk about it later on also. But the DC or your e-commerce fulfillment center is not able to handle everything at any time. So think of Black Friday, where usually your distribution center can be at its peak capacity. And a store is then key in in a successful omnichannel delivery. And also you can use that store network to get your inventory closer to your consumer. So that allows you to offer 2-hour delivery or even closer. If you're really close, you put your inventory really close to your consumer who orders online. And of course, retailers need to have trust in their inventory and their inventory that they promise to their consumer in order to offer these kind of delivery methods. So like we've seen in the quote before, if you break your promise, it's that to the experience. So you really need to be sure that that one pair of sneakers is still in that store if you accept an online order. So if you look at the visual on the right, which is also from our recent research on last mile delivery, you can see the fulfillment locations that retailers use to offer two modern delivery services. So 2-hour delivery and same-day delivery. And you see actually a very prominent role for the store in those services. And you see the difference between the storefront and the back room. And especially the 2-hour delivery, you see that especially the storefront is being used as a fulfillment location. And then really the employee just walks around in the store, the same shelves as the consumer is shopping, to pick a small order for a consumer and then hands it over to a bike courier. Whereas the same-day delivery, more often the back room of a store is used. So people have more time. So usually it takes a day, and there's more time to pick the goods from, for example, small mini warehouse in your store. So that's a really interesting difference, and both are actually from the store. So I found it to be really interesting.
Yeah, right here. I know we always say that Amazon is the king of 2-hour delivery. They really changed the consumer's expectations, but they are fulfilling out of warehouses. And so why do you think that the store is so important here in retail, and why not just open more warehouses?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think that's the key point here. Because let's take Amazon as an example. They have invested many millions, hundreds of millions in a network of distribution center throughout the world, close to cities, to offer this 2-hour delivery. And people are getting used to it. So they're expecting competitors of Amazon also to be able to deliver that. And I think the store network of retailers who maybe have had traditionally a large network of stores can really be that differentiator and that vital asset into also delivering that 2-hour delivery, because your store is actually usually even more dense network, and actually in essence there can also be those fulfillment centers, of course a lot smaller, and also consumers still need to be able to shop there, but it offers really a nice opportunity to put your inventory really close to your consumer.
Yeah, so in that sense, you can really, as an partly offline retailer, leverage your dense network of stores to create way more sales and with that compete against other big competitors using a warehouse strategy.
Exactly.
I think that jumps nicely into the next part, which is using the store as a mini DC. And Madalynn, you already shared your thoughts about Amazon a little bit already just with Rogier, but I think you have more interesting points to share. So I'd like to hand over to you again to discuss the competing role of a store against major e-commerce players.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we talked a lot about trends up until this point, and then what I'd like to transition this webinar over to is really talking about the tangibles. What do we mean when we say stores as DCs, and what can that actually do for our business? So I think we see a lot of our customers are starting to tap into their store stock for orders, and there's a few reasons for this. One, they want to be able to have that full price sell through and get that product to the customer quickly before it needs to go into a sales section. And they also want to be utilizing the associates' time. So if you're going to be able to have an omnichannel strategy where you're using your store associates, that could be a completely dedicated person. I mean, they are going to have a short period of time, 2 hours, to be able to get that product to the customer. I recently was shopping on Lululemon, and they gave me the option for a few of the products I was buying do I want to pick them up in store? Do I want them shipped to me? And for some of those orders, they were really close in the store. So great, I want to go and pick that up. And then for others, they were closer in the DC. So in that example, then you would utilize both your stores as a DC and additionally yours. But what we see the challenge is being able to have that accurate information to be able to fulfill these orders. You need to know exactly what's in your stores and where. And the customer also needs to know that because they're also meeting you at that point, again, within that 2-hour window. So it's really about being able to provide that accurate information. Of course, we believe RFID is that technology, and we'll talk more about the technology. But Rogier, what do you think about tapping into stores?
Totally agree there, Madalynn. And what I really like about this is that some people have declared stores not being the future of retail, and it's the full shift towards online. But I really think stores are having actually a more important role in the coming years. So in this proposition that we're explaining here, stores will have partially a fulfillment function, and that really changes the role of a store. So both the storefront as either a flagship store or a discount store, and really that experience center where consumers can experience your products, and the back of the store, which functions as a fulfillment center, which is really a powerful combination. And especially if you have that dense network throughout cities, it's a huge opportunity. And of course, it has some major implications for your stores because the layout will probably be very different. Whereas usually you want to have as large as possible shop floor, of course, to gain as much revenue as possible. In this situation, you might want to change that a little bit into having a little bit more of a back room, where you can have these the packing of goods, for example, or preparing an order. So that's a really interesting change, I think. And indeed, again, here is the same applies. The inventory is key. So your visibility of your inventory, you really want to have that 100% sharp in order to make promises to your consumer and to exactly know which orders you can accept or which ones you can't. So that's really, we'll talk about it later, but I wanted to stress that again.
Yeah, and I think it's good that you stressed that, Rogier, because it's exactly something that we will dive into right now. But first, we have a little quote that Madalynn wanted to highlight. So Madalynn, one more time, back to you.
Yeah, so I think we keep saying the store of the role is changing, but it's not becoming less important. We really want to support that strategic shopper. So you can just assume that a customer has been on your website before even entering your store. Therefore, the online and offline belong together. So as an example here, L'Oreal is one of the largest consumer brands. They're expecting a world where shoppers can switch between channels swiftly. So half the business is online, half is offline. And as a consequence, there's that symbiotic relationship between both channels.
I think that stresses really well that even in an offline world, people will have had interaction online and will have already a goal when they enter a store. And that goal is often to get something, to find something that they really want, either if it's online or offline. And for that, RFID and with that product availability are extremely important. Madalynn, can you tell us more about how this is impacting your omnichannel experience?
Yeah, so we've talked about fulfilling orders, but I want to share some experiences that we have in the world of RFID technology being able to help with omnichannel. So you can do this without RFID, but you're going to have limited digital availability here. So we're talking about stock inaccuracies that can come from checking out with using a small instead of a large, or theft, or just even in goods receiving from your distribution center. But it's really important to make sure that you are not disappointing the customer. So to avoid cancellations and to make things really secure on your digital availability, we see that they're putting in a safety stock threshold. So what that means is that if you only have X number of products within your store, you set that threshold to 2 in this example that you see on the screen. We're only going to display items online to be sold if we have more than that. This way we're ensuring that we're not canceling that order or creating any split shipments here. So in this example, if my safety stock threshold's 2, I am not going to be able to sell through that extra small and that extra large. So only the small, medium, and large are available, and even the large may only be 1 item. But if we were able to lower that down even to 0, you can see we're making our availability a full size run available online. And it may sound too good to be true, but we do have a lot of customers that are doing this today. We see that they're setting their target stocks to maybe even zero. And here you can see on these stock levels, we looked at our customers, and if we are setting our threshold to only 1, we're actually excluding 50% of our SKUs. So this is real data that we gathered. I think that's important to note. But where is that value in lowering your thresholds and creating that digital availability? Well, with RFID then being able to provide that real-time visibility and showing your stock on sub-location level, we are increasing that availability by 50% if we are only showing store stock, the DC stock. And then if 63% if we're showing the DC as well as the store with a safety stock threshold at 2. And last but not least, if we look at the entire store and the DC and lower that threshold, we can see that 73% of SKUs are now available to be sold. And this is a really big jump of 23% from just showing your DC stock, which I think most retailers are doing today.
And with that, we have a question because, of course, safety stock is there to prevent never selling a no to the customer. But we are wondering if you are aware right now of what safety stock is being used in your company. So are you aware of what threshold is used for your digital availability? Is it higher than 2? Is it between 1 and 2? Do you not use a threshold, or are you not aware? And we give you a couple seconds to fill out this poll. Let me take a few more seconds. So I still see people filling out the poll. And I already see some really interesting results.
And I could also share an experience from a major sports fashion retailer that we work with. They were lowering their thresholds during Christmas time. And by doing that, they were making their products much more available, and they did increase their sales. But what they noticed is that when they were canceling these orders, it was impacting their NPS score. And I think that's also a really good trade-off to mention that NPS score and safety thresholds in your mind might not be connected, but they are. So you need to make sure that you have that accurate data.
Yes. And with that, I would like to end our poll and share our results. And what we see here is that some of you, 31%, has quite a high threshold of higher than 2, but also a lot of you are not aware, 62% of you. And I think that's really interesting as a takeaway. If you are looking into RFID and if you want to start this conversation within your company, it might be good to also check the safety threshold that you're holding up to build the case for RFID even further. And of course, if you have more questions on that, feel free to reach out to either one of us.
Well, if you see, Steffi, the numbers that Madalynn just showed, I think there's a huge opportunity here if you have that at least that number sharp and you can start working on lowering it. Imagine the possibilities in terms of revenue and availability if you start doing that. So.
Indeed, that might up to really big numbers.
Yeah, I would say so.
And Madalynn, I know we are getting short in time already, but could you quickly explain us what the single point of truth means when it comes to stock?
Yeah, so using that RFID technology is that foundation to easily, seamlessly, and efficiently capture products. So we're including here the status and their location. And on the next slide, we kind of show here that EPCS is the GS1 standard that enables us to share information about those physical movements, as well as the status of products as they travel throughout the supply chain. So we're talking about our real-time stock visibility platform, and the single point of truth, or SPOT as we like to coin it, is about the organization's stock situation. So on the next slide, just briefly here, not to get too much into the technical details, but what we're just showing is all the way from your factory to the store, there are so many RFID read points that can be captured. And in an EPCIS repository, we are capturing everything from birth all the way through to when that product was sold and possibly returned. And that's really important to understand where all of your inventory is living.
Yeah, and we have another webinar on that. So if you want to know more about this, feel free to check it out on our website. And this is one side of creating that unified stock pool where all your stock lives accurately as input for your online shopping experiences. But we also see other opportunities for RFID to step in. And that is for locating, picking, and packing products in the store. And Madalynn, you also have some examples of how that would work.
Yeah, so just briefly, utilizing RFID here, we're able to fasten that pick process. Being able to physically locate a product within the store using the search functionality of RFID will bring you to that last item. So for sports fashion, this is really important to find that last shoe. But in a bigger retailer where they may have hundreds of thousands of products, if you're looking for that one blue shirt, you're going to need some help. So in order to find it, that's the pick process. And then talking about packing, well, it would be very simple if you said in your application, great, we found this product, we are ready to ship it to the customer. And a label can be generated and a pickup can be set up right in that moment, all within that user interface.
Yes, indeed. So quite a lot of opportunities for RFID.
Yeah, all the retailers I've talked to about enabling ship from store or starting to use their store as a fulfillment center are always worried about the cost of fulfillment from a store, because it's still the employee of the store who is picking and packing, and it takes more time. People are looking for this for their goods. So this is really an improvement to lower the cost of fulfillment from store. So getting that process more efficient. So I really like that.
Yes,
Yeah.
making the process as simple and quick and easy as possible for a store employee that already has so much to do next to fulfilling.
Yep.
Yeah. And with that, I would like to jump to our final part of this webinar, which is sharing some best practices. And I think you've already spoken quite a bit from example Rogier, but you also have a really nice example from one of the cases you've worked on.
Yeah, exactly. So with Capgemini, we worked with a retailer, global retailer, who had, of course, during the COVID pandemic, a lot of stores had to close down, and online sales was had an enormous boost, and such a boost that the online DC could not handle all the orders anymore. So it was at its max capacity. So the retailer had a look at what they could do to take off the heat from that DC and start using other ways to fulfill online orders. And a logical explanation or a solution to that problem was using the stores, actually. So within only a few weeks, they launched a number of stores, first a small number of stores as a fulfillment center. And the stores were almost idle, so there was a good opportunity for them to keep running. And most importantly, it took down a lot of stress from the DC. And there was a really nice example of how quickly you can lower the heat from your DC and still offer fulfillment from your stores. And looking forward, this is a great capability in the future for offering these delivery services that we talked about. So same-day delivery, 2-hour delivery, bike delivery, etc. So I thought it was a really nice example of this. And of course, using that inventory availability, they could send even more orders to a store. So because now the safety threshold was quite high, because it was built in such a short period. But I think starting to improve, you can work on that safety threshold and start using more stores to fulfill online orders.
Yeah, so I think it's a really nice example of how you can start quickly already with a couple of stores that are in the central hubs of your network, but then it doesn't need to stop there. You can still expand, you can add other components to it to create this full omni-channel experience throughout your entire company.
Exactly, yep.
And Madalynn, you also had some practical examples from the retail industry that you wanted to highlight with us today.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the points just to make as we're coming to this close is that we're not downplaying the role of the DC, but 5 years ago, that was our only option to fulfill customer orders online. But today we're moving into this digital transformation where we have the ability to communicate in real time with our customers about any products that they could want, whether that's coming into the store and being able to touch a smart mirror or a screen, or even just going on their phones and being able to engage with the product using RFID. I think these are two options that we do see happening very rapidly, and it's becoming more of an interest. So I think this is a good trend to follow. There is definitely business value behind it, and that's what we focus on. So definitely happy to provide more information on what we see in the market.
Thanks a lot, Madalynn. And of course, we shared a lot of information with you today, and I know that we're running out of time, so I want to round off this webinar so far. But we are also curious to see if you want to receive more updates about upcoming webinars, white papers, or other cool information about RFID in retail. So I'll launch a quick poll with 2 simple answers. Is it yes, please, I want to have more information, or no, thank you, I'm good for now? And as you're all answering, I would already like to thank Madalynn and Rogier already a lot for your efforts and for your interesting insights today.
No problem.
Sure.
This is a very cool topic. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, same here. It was my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Really glad to have you here with us today. And luckily, a lot of you are really interested to hear more about RFID, so that's very positive for us. We'll take that as a compliment. But we also have more webinars already to look at online. So if you already feel like you have some spare time or you want to hear more about these interesting topics, feel free to check out our webinar recordings. And we will post more of these webinars in the future, but for now we will take a little summer break. So we will be back in August with a new webinar.